They showed up just a little after sunset, to silhouettes framed by the amber glow of my porch light, shivering in the cool breeze that rolled down the valley. I wasn't expecting anyone. My cabin was the kind of place people drove past without noticing, tucked between old pine trees and a gravel road that barely existed on most maps. I lived alone, by design, so when I heard that cautious knock, it didn't just echo through wood, it echoed through my ribs. I opened the door slowly, hand resting on the frame. The first girl looked up, eyes soft brown and wide with exhaustion. She had a face that looked like it hadn't known sleep in days, dirt smudged along her jaw, wine-burnt lips. Behind her stood a younger one, barely out of her teens, eyes darting round like a rabbit ready to bolt. She held her backpack strapped so tight her knuckles were white. "Sorry to bother you," the first one said, voice barely above a whisper. "We were only looking for somewhere to stay. Just one night. We can pay. Or work. Anything." The second girl didn't speak. Her breathing was ragged. Her cheeks were still damp from tears she was pretending hadn't fallen. I didn't speak right away. I looked past them, down the empty gravel road. No car, no gear, just those two worn-down backpacks and the kind of silence that hides panic under manners. "Come in," I said. She blinked, like she didn't quite hear me right. "You sure?" the older one asked. "Just one night. That's all. You can stay," I said again, firmer this time. "Not just a night. However long you need." They hesitated, genuinely hesitated, as if the idea of someone offering something without a catch felt dangerous. The older one stepped forward first, glancing back at her companion. When they both finally crossed the threshold, I felt something shift in the air. The door closed behind them with a soft thud, and for the first time in years, I wasn't alone in that cabin. I led them toward the fireplace, where orange coals still pulsed under the grate. The younger one looked around like she was memorizing exits. The older girl kept close to her, always between me and the other, like a human shield made of bone-deep instinct. "I'm Mira," she said finally. "This is Lina." I gave them my name. It felt strange saying it out loud after days of no conversation. I fetched a kettle, started heating water. I didn't ask why they were here. I didn't ask who they were running from. I just said, "You hungry?" They both nodded at once. A subtle flicker of relief passed between them, like a silent message. "He's not asking yet." I made scrambled eggs and toast, the fastest thing I could put together without making them wait. Lioness sat on the floor, near the fire, arms wrapped around her knees. Mira helped set the plates, overly polite, too careful, like she was trying not to offend the air itself. They ate in silence. No questions, no confessions, just warmth. When Mira finished, she looked up and said, "You don't ask many questions." I shook my head. "You'll tell me what matters. If it matters. When it's time." Her lips twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile, but wasn't just tired either. I noticed Lina slowly leaning back against a cushion, her whole body slumping like it had been holding itself upright for days. I stoked the fire again, added another log. I grabbed 2 extra wool blankets and tossed them onto the couch. "You both can take the couch tonight," I said. "I'll grab the chair." Mira looked like she wanted to protest, like she'd been taught to argue against kindness, but instead she just nodded. "Thank you." The fire cracked softly, casting long shadows across the pine walls. The kettle whistled, and I poured them tea, nothing fancy, just mint and honey. They held the mugs like lifelines. We didn't talk much after that. Sometimes words aren't needed. Sometimes presence is enough. I took the old recliner in the corner and watched as the 2 girls slowly drifted off beside the fire. Lina curled up, one arm wrapped around her backpack like it might disappear. Mira sat upright for a long time, blinking in half-sleep, as if her brain wouldn't let go yet. Eventually, she leaned her head back and closed her eyes. I didn't sleep. Not because I didn't trust them, but because I knew whatever they were running from might not be far behind. And for the first time in years, I wasn't just watching the woods for myself. The fire had faded to a dull glow by morning, but the warmth lingered. I watched their chests rise and fall with slow, steady rhythm. It was the first time I'd seen them still, truly still, like they weren't bracing for something to jump out of the dark. I made coffee quiet as I could. The aroma filled the cabin with that deep, grounding smell that always reminded me of early hunting trips with my father, before everything got complicated. Before solitude became a choice instead of a wound. Mira stirred first. She sat up fast, blinking like she wasn't sure where she was. Her hand reached automatically for Lyanna, who was still sleeping under a heap of wool blankets. When she spotted me near the stove, she eased a little. Sorry. Did we overstay? No such thing, I said. I handed her a mug. It's hot. Careful. She took it with both hands, like it might vanish. Her fingers were still trembling. Thank you, she whispered. Lyanna woke slower. She mumbled something into the blanket, then sat up with her hair all tangled and wild. There was a second of panic in her eyes, but then she saw her sister, saw me, saw the firelight, and her breathing calmed. I made toast and eggs again. Simple, familiar, no sudden movements. They ate quietly, politely. Every thank you from Mira sounded like it was stitched to a deeper question. Why are you doing this? What do you want in return? The truth was I didn't know. Maybe I just recognized something in them. I'd been lost before, not in the dramatic, chase through the woods kind of way. Just lost inside. Grief will do that. So will guilt. Asterisk. The sun broke through the trees by mid-morning, casting gold streaks through the cabin windows. They both watched it like it was a rare event. Maybe it was. When they finished eating, Mira stood and started gathering dishes. I stopped her gently. You don't have to do that. We want to, she said quickly. We should. You've already done too much. I let her rinse the plates. It seemed to give her something to hold on to. Lyanna sat by the window, knees to chest, eyes tracing the edge of the forest. She didn't speak much, but she kept sneaking glances at me when she thought I wasn't looking. They didn't ask for Wi-Fi, didn't reach for their phones. In fact, I hadn't seen a phone yet. Just those backpacks, stuffed so tight the zippers strained. I brought out two flannel shirts from my closet, clean, warm, too big for them, but better than the thin sweatshirts they wore. Mira looked at the offer like it was dangerous. Then she accepted and helped Lyanna into one without a word. After lunch, we moved outside. The air was crisp, sun hanging just above the tree line. I chopped wood near the shed. Mira sat on the porch, eyes following each swing of the axe like she was reading something in the rhythm. Lyanna wandered to the edge of the clearing and just stood there, breathing, letting her arms hang loose. Eventually, she spoke. It's quiet here. Too quiet? I asked. She shook her head. No. Just different. Mira called her back when the wind picked up, and they both huddled under a blanket on the porch steps. I brought out mugs of hot cider, the kind I brewed in batches every fall. They sipped it like it was something sacred. That night, they helped stack the wood I'd chopped. Mira was strong, quiet, but capable. Lyanna followed her lead, mimicking how she crouched, how she lifted, how she moved. They didn't complain once. No flinches, just a slow return to breath and body. Later, as we sat again by the fire, Mira finally looked me in the eye and asked, "Why did you let us in?" Really, I didn't have a neat answer, just the truth. Because you knocked, I said, and because you looked like you needed someone not to ask why. She held that answer like a puzzle she wanted to solve. Lyanna rested her head on her sister's shoulder and whispered something I couldn't hear, but Mira smiled faintly, the first real smile since they arrived. You don't know us, she said. Not yet, I replied. She stared at the fire a while longer. It's strange, not being scared. Doesn't have to be, I said. Fear's not a place you live, just a place you pass through. Lyanna had already fallen asleep against her. Mira eased her down onto the blanket, tucking it around her like she'd done it 1,000 times. You can take the bed tonight, I said quietly. I'll keep watch. Mira hesitated. You don't have to. I want to. She watched me for a long beat, then nodded. I sat in the chair again, firelight flickering across the wooden walls, shadows dancing above the hearth. And though I was alone in the chair, I didn't feel alone anymore. The third morning started with the smell of apples and cinnamon. I'd sliced the last of the full harvest into a pan, added a splash of cider, let it bubble over the fire while the girls slept. The scent must have worked like a charm. Mira sat up groggy but smiling. Lyanna followed soon after. Hair tingled, eyes clearer than they'd been. Smells like something real, Mira said, tugging one of my flannel shirts tighter around her shoulders. Like a memory, breakfast was quiet again, but not tense. The silence was soft now, companionable. Lyanna even laughed, genuinely laughed when I spilled a spoonful of syrup onto the table and tried to hide it with my hand. After we ate, We stepped onto the porch. The air had that clean, hopeful bite December brings when the snow hasn't hit yet, but the frost whispers a warning. Pine needles glistened with morning dew. Somewhere in the woods, a hawk cried out sharp, wild, alive. Mira leaned against the porch rail, mug in hand, eyes squinting at the tree line. You really don't want anything in return? No, I said. I just don't like seeing people freeze in the dark. Lioness spoke up then, voice light but certain. You know we're running from something, right? I figured. You're not even curious. I'm a little curious, I admitted, but not enough to ask before you're ready. She looked surprised, like she'd prepared for resistance that never came. Mira tilted her head, steadying me again the way she had when I first opened the door, like she was trying to see through whatever mask I was wearing. The thing was, I wasn't wearing one. Not anymore. Can I ask something back? She said. Go ahead. Why did you really let us stay longer? I hesitated, then answered plainly. Because it felt right. And because everyone deserves a place to land. Mira blinked. Lionel looked down into her cup like she didn't trust her own reaction. You can't just say things like that, Mira whispered. Not unless you mean them. I meant it. The moment stretched, fragile and warm. Mira looked over at Lionel, a silent question passing between them like a well-worn code. Then, softly, Mira said, we can help round here. Chop wood, clean, cook, whatever you need. I don't need anything, I said, but I'd like the company. That seemed to land somewhere deeper than politeness. She gave a short nod. Okay, the rest of the day moved in easy rhythm. I showed them how to load the wood stove without choking the fire. Mira fixed the squeaky hinge on the back screen door with oil she found in my toolbox. Lionel swept the porch and folded the blankets without being asked. We didn't talk much about the past, but they started asking about mine. How long you been up here? Mira asked as I handed her a basket of kindling. 10 years? By yourself? Mostly. Why? I thought about lying, saying something vague, but I didn't because I lost someone, and I didn't know how to be around people after that. Mira nodded slowly. She didn't pry. That was the deal. We respected the quiet. That night, just after dinner, Lionel looked up from the couch and asked the question I didn't expect. Do you want us to stay? It caught me, not because of the question, but because I realized I did. Yes, I said. I do. Mira didn't speak, but her shoulders loosened, her fingers unclenched from the blanket. And when Lionel reached for her hand, Mira didn't pull away. The fire crackled low again. I sat in my usual chair. They curled up on the couch, this time without apology. I didn't pretend we were a family. We weren't, but we were something. Maybe it didn't matter what they were running from. What mattered more was that they'd stopped, right here, on my porch, in my woods, in my life, and I'd opened the door.